Hello, everyone. Welcome to the meeting. We're going to wait just a couple of minutes to make sure that everyone who has signed up has a chance to join us, but we will begin in just a couple of minutes. For now, I'm going to mute myself and turn off my microphone. I'm sorry, mute myself and turn off my camera, but I'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Hello, and a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar in a series that is part of UEA's Enhancing Teacher Agency with Technology project. I'm Christy Norrie. I will hand over now to the primary investigator, Professor John Gordon, who will introduce today's speakers and talk a little bit about today's presentation and our project.
Thank you very much, Christy, and welcome everyone. Thank you ever so much for joining us this afternoon, and just an initial welcome to our guests, Dr. Sue Sentance and Dr. Jessie Durk, who I'll introduce much more fully in a moment. Just some context for everyone if you're unfamiliar with our project. As Christy said, it's called Enhancing Teacher Agency with Technology, and it's some research that we've been conducting in East Anglia and particularly across Norfolk over the last 18 months or so. We have until the end of this calendar year to continue work on the project, and it's very focused on the experiences teachers share with us about how they use technology in all aspects of their professional lives. So we're certainly at the stage now where we've heard a great deal of very interesting information, accounts of practice from teachers, and we're able to draw some conclusions about the conditions that support teachers' agency with technology and support their effective use of technology, primarily to support the learning of their students, of course, but also to work efficiently, to manage workload, and how some of those things relate to well-being in professional lives as well. In terms of today and the webinar, this is the third webinar in our series. And we're delighted today to have a focus on exploring physical computing in schools, or the EPICS program for short, and that's led by Dr. Sue Sentance. Sue is the director of the Raspberry Pi Computing Education Research Centre, which is based in the Department of Computer Science and Technology at the University of Cambridge. And Sue has worked in many roles in the fields of computing education for over 25 years. And Sue's roles have included teaching in secondary schools, work as a teacher educator, a university lecturer and researcher. And Sue has led many initiatives and projects in this field as well. So in Sue's current role, she leads on research projects spanning physical computing, AI education, and teachers' professional development, and that includes the EPICS project, with which Jessie is also involved. So Jessie is also a research associate in the same team, and Jessie's research explores primary school pupils' attitudes and beliefs towards physical computing, and particularly the long-term impacts of physical computing on their confidence and creativity. And before her current work, Jessie has also worked in science and physics education research, covering dimensions such as assessment, widening participation, and inquiry-based learning. So between them, Sue and Jessie have great expertise. So we're very fortunate to have you join us, Sue and Jessie. Welcome. And I'll hand over to you. We very much look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I'm just going to share my presentation, so just bear with me. Get the right thing up, and I get some positive feedback from John and Christy that's showing. Is that, yeah, nods? Great. Okay, thank you very much for that detailed introduction. I don't think we really need to introduce ourselves, but we'll just both, I'm Sue Sentance. Jessie, do you want to just say hello?
Hi, thanks for that introduction, John.
So yeah, so we're Sue and Jessie, and we are going to talk to you today initially about physical computing, particularly in the context of the primary stage, and then about our Exploring Physical Computing in School project, which we call EPICS. And I'll introduce the project, and then Jessie's going to go on about to talk about the data we've collected so far and our findings, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. So yes, so I've just said what's on the agenda. So let's move on to the first part. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about physical computing in general, and why we are focusing on the microbit as a sort of proxy for the whole of physical computing. So what is the definition of physical computing? So that down the bottom there in italics, you can see a research definition: creatively designing tangible interactive objects or systems using programmable hardware. Is quite a mouthful, but actually what physical computing is a way of teaching about computing concepts, but by using devices. And there are many devices. You can see in the middle, this is an extract from a paper about physical computing in general, that there are lots of different types of devices that can be used for physical computing. But generally what they have in common is that they have some hardware and some software, and that they are programmable. As opposed to a little robot that might run around your garden cutting your lawn. They are that you can program them, and they're really helpful for teaching computing, but they're not new. And I did find this picture of the MIT programmable brick, which is the thing that the red picture on the slide, which was, I think, one of the earliest claims to fame for a physical computing device that followed on when LOGO was going on in MIT with Mitch Resnick and colleagues. So we've been around, physical computing has been around for a while. Lots of different devices have been developed, and the picture at the bottom of the 2020s, we've got microbit version 2, which came out in 2020. So lots of different ways of doing physical computing. And what can you learn with physical computing? Well, it's not just about programming. And one of the things about computing is that sometimes teachers feel it's just all about programming, but physical computing gives you a range of different things that you can learn. So you can learn programming. You can also learn about hardware and sensors, inputs and outputs to devices, and you can learn about design and making and having ideas and following them through and testing them out. So there are lots of content areas in physical computing. And then as the other skills, you can learn to work with each other. Physical computing is really good for working together, because the things you're making are often sitting in front of you. They're not on somebody's screen. They are in front of you and they're tangible. We can learn agency from physical computing. That's our ability to make a difference, to make a change, to be able to do things. We can create things, and that inspires confidence and, of course, lots of digital skills. So there's quite a lot of research already about physical computing, and I've put some quotes here from teachers and pupils from a previous study or from previous studies that we've done in this area that sort of highlight some of the real benefits of physical computing. And the teacher in the top left there, the teacher has said, one of the reasons why I particularly like physical computing is because it gives immediate feedback to the children. So if a light goes on, or if some sound happens, you immediately know that your program is happening. If the wrong sound happens, you know that there's something wrong with it. That can be much more immediate than screen feedback. There's also, if you look at the top right, there's the comment there. They can actually touch it, feel it working. That a physical device, it brings it more down to earth for them. So this idea about something being real, about being tangible, you can touch it, you can really see it. You're involving all your senses. We haven't got smell in there, I don't think, but that's very important that you don't get from screen-based computing. And then it's fun. And there's a pupil, this is an 11-year-old pupil who said in an interview, the options of what you could do, it's so cool, you could use lights or anything else, really. And then just to finish off on this topic, the physical computing devices target non-experts. So, they are for children learning to do computing. So they're good in primary. They can be for teachers who haven't had much experience of computing. They can be visually appealing. But the paper that is quoted in the blue box there says there needs to be enough extensibility to sustain interest. So it's not just a sort of one-off lesson. Something that you can keep doing is in a good sort of device for physical computing. And then what about teaching with physical computing? So what I've got on the top there are this tinkering on the left and step-by-step instructions on the right. I feel like with programming in general, we have this kind of spectrum that about, do you just play and explore on the left, just kind of, just find out by just trying things out, or on the right hand side, are you doing something that's quite defined? You're copying some code. And you can see that the analogy of Lego explains this quite well. But what we kind of really want to be is somewhere in the middle. We want to provide some scaffolding. And we can use various approaches that are specific to computing for this and those that are more generic. So physical computing really lends itself to project-based learning, or PBL, where you can go through the whole design cycle. It lends itself to pair work and working together. There are specific methods which you may or may not know about, called use, modify, create. Use, modify, create is an approach to teaching computing where you use something first before you try modifying how the program works. And that's ideal for physical computing because you can see what the device already does. And Prim is a way of structuring programming lessons that starts with predict. So you can predict what the device might do, and then you can get on to investigating how it does that. And the whole the physical computing fits very well into inquiry-based learning. So if you're doing that in your primary school, in science and in other subjects, then physical computing can support you with that. So I think that gives an overview of physical computing generally. I'm now just moving on to the microbit before I start talking about our particular project. So for those of you who aren't aware, and I think the microbit's quite widely used now in the UK, and particularly in primary schools since the new the BBC Microbit Next Gen campaign. But the microbit was originally invented and launched by many different partners in an initiative set up by the BBC and launched in 2015. And it was sort of a nostalgic thing about the BBC Micro that people who are of a certain age might remember the BBC Micro as being a very empowering way of getting personal computing into everybody's hands. And there was this sort of motivation for doing something similar, but it wasn't too expensive, because there was, as you can see, there's a lot of devices out there, but they all have a cost. Screen-based programming can be free, but the hardware always has a cost. So the idea was to create a device that was really low cost, but really packed a punch, really had a lot there. And in 2016, the first initiative, the microbits, involved all 11-year-olds in the UK being sent a microbit with teacher training for teachers. If you follow the history through, the Microbit Educational Foundation was formed. The BBC Microbit version 2 was launched with additional features. It now has a speaker, a microphone, a touch sensor on the little logo. And then in 2023, the new initiative called BBC Microbit, the Next Gen campaign, enabled all primary schools in the UK to order a class set. And this campaign has been accompanied by absolutely zillions of resources. There's loads on the Microbit website and on the BBC. And I pinched this little stat from the Microbit website, where it reports that the Microbit is now being used around the world, not just in the UK, but over 25 million children. So while there are many physical computing devices, this is a particularly useful one for using in formal education in school. So now I'm going to move on to the EPICS project, and then I'll give a little bit of an overview and then hand over to Jessie to give more detail. So I sort of have the overarching responsibility for this project, but the day-to-day operation is all led by Jessie. And we also have Carrie-Anne, Laurie and Kata helping us on various levels, small and larger amounts, through the project as well. So the goal of this project, given that we know something about physical computing, was to do a longitudinal study. So to follow a group of children over a period of 5 years to investigate how engagement with physical computing actually makes a difference, or doesn't, in terms of students' interests and attitudes in computing over time. And our children started off sort of age 8, 9, and we will be following this group of children through till they're 13, 14. We've also got a wider study that I will talk about in a moment. So we started last March, so we've been going for 1 full year. And we have made lots of progress that Jessie can talk to you about. And we finished in February 2019. And I said we're very grateful to our the donation we received to enable us to do this. It's not an evaluation of the microbit or an evaluation of the program. It is original research that we hope to make a massive difference to this field. So we have 3 research questions that we're aiming to investigate over the 5 years. So the first one is what I've already indicated, that can we see a difference over time? And we're looking at creativity, which is quite obvious, I guess, technological self-efficacy, which is a way of saying the confidence with computers or confidence with technology, and then socio-technological agency, which is around the idea that I can do something with technology, that I have an influence in the world of technology relating to society. So that's our big question. We're also looking at gender-related differences, because there is ad hoc evidence that female children do respond really well to physical computing, but there aren't any really larger scale studies that show that this happens over time. And because our project goes from primary through to secondary school, we can a real opportunity to see if the gender-related differences change over time. And then the third question is around teachers and parents. and what their role is in school and at home, and how they can impact physical computing experiences. And we're not generally looking for whether using physical computing makes you want to go and do a GCSE in computer science, for example. It's really about your overall confidence with technology. So this is the overview of our project before I hand over to Jessie. So it's a 5-year mixed method study, and a mixed methods means we've got the qualitative side, that's we're collecting a textual in-depth data, and we've got a quantitative side, which means we're collecting broader data that we can actually analyze numerically. We can convert that into numbers and then analyze larger data. So on the left-hand side, we have a set of 19 schools that we're working with. We're conducting interviews and focus groups with pupils, parents, and teachers. And we're doing with those schools have already been recruited, and we're working with those schools over the next 5 years, and we're really grateful to them for this investment that they've made into our research. And on the quantitative side, we have got sort of 3 data points. One was last year. You may have been involved in the big survey that we did last the autumn time last year, and with pupil engagement and teacher engagement. We're doing that again in 2026 and in 2028, and I'll be sharing how you can get involved with that at the end of this webinar. So I'll now pass over to Jessie. Okay, Jessie?
Yep, can you hear me okay?
Hear you fine.
Thank you. Okay, so thanks, Sue. So I'm going to talk to you about year 1 data collection, so what that looked like, and then some preliminary findings from that as well. So if you go to the next slide, please, Sue. Thank you. So I'll start by talking about that qualitative strand of our project that Sue was just talking about. And as she's already touched on, we're working with 19 partner schools all across the UK. So these are located in England. There's 10 schools in England, 5 of those are in London, and then a further 5 in Scotland, 2 in Wales and 2 in Northern Ireland. And as Sue said, we're really grateful to these schools for coming on board this 5-year journey with us. And it's nice also that the proportions that I've just outlined, they sort of loosely represent the proportions of primary school children in the UK. So that's nice as well. So last year, our year 1 data collection for the qualitative side looked like this. We interviewed 23 teachers across those 19 schools. We conducted 43 focus groups with 232 children. So an average of about 6 children per focus group. And each visit included a classroom observation. So we observed one of the microbit lessons that the teachers were delivering to their class, a teacher interview, around 1 to 3 focus groups, depending on the size of the school and how many had signed up to take part, with groups of children, including drawing activities, and then our own field notes provided additional contextual information. So sort of the official qualitative data for this project consists of the interviews and the focus groups with the children, their teachers and their parents, but we're also getting field notes from those classroom observations as well, just to provide some context for the things that the children are then mentioning in their focus groups, or the teachers are talking about in their interviews, for example. So to keep the focus groups engaging for children of that age, last year they were 8 to 9 years old in year 4 or primary 5, depending on which region of the UK. To keep it engaging for that age group, we wanted the focus groups to be as interactive and as fun for them as possible. So one of the activities we had them do was a drawing. We got them to draw whatever they would want to make with the microbit, if they just put their imaginations to it and just had complete free rein. So this example is nice here that I want to share with you. A child has decided to make their microbit into some sort of interactive and friendly pet or robot that speaks to you and says, "I'm hungry," and the LED display shows a face and it's got legs as well. So that's really nice because you can see how already they're building on the key skills and concepts that they've learnt from being introduced to the microbit that year, and realizing, okay, the microbit has an LED display. I could get it to display a face, it plays sound, maybe I could get it to say I'm hungry, and all coming together in this concept of I've made a pet with my microbit. So the drawings there, we are going to analyse those in terms of the children's creativity. Thanks, Sue. Next slide, please. Then I'll talk about the quantitative side for the Year 1 data collection and what that looked like. There we collected data from 17 schools, but a lot more data from the pupils now, as this time whole classes could take part. So 20 or 30 children in a class, they all provided data, for example. So we have data from 516 pupils, the same age, more or less, and 99 teachers. And from our qualitative interviews, we were finding that that particular age group, 8 to 9 years old, really they meet the microbit in primary school sort of 1 or 2 years later. That comes a bit later. So we didn't just want to send out a survey to the pupils just, you know, into the void and expect that they will have experience with the microbit and then want to answer our questions about it. We had to provide that initial experience with the microbit for them themselves. So we designed a class activity for the teachers to deliver to their classes, and we then had the children answer some questions about the activity that they'd just taken part in, and the teacher also had their own set of questions. So you can see an example of the children's questions on the right hand side. We asked them, what did the microbit do and how did it work? Was it easy or hard to use? What else could you get it to do? And who would find it useful? So those last three questions are probing their self-efficacy, creativity and agency around using technology. And because for lots of the children it was an initial exploration into using the microbit, we didn't get them to do any programming with the microbit in the class activity. So we designed all the materials for the teacher, and we even devised the program that the microbits would run and sent these over to the teachers. And the teachers pre-programmed their microbits for their classes so that all the children had to do was simply interact with the microbit as an end user. So they just had to press the buttons and see what LED display came up, or tilt or move it in a certain way and see what sounds played, for example. And separately, the teacher survey was open to teachers who did not sign up for the class activity. So if a teacher just wanted to fill in their slightly longer survey without doing the class activity with their class, then that was absolutely fine as well. But their survey included questions around the context and demographics of the school, their teaching experience, their teaching practices with physical computing and the microbit, and their perceptions around the microbit to teach computing. Thanks, Sue. Next slide, please. So I'll outline some initial findings, and what these are based on are a subset of the data that has been analysed so far. So as you can probably see, we've got a lot of data still in the stage of being analysed from that first year of data collection, and we've also just started year 2 of data collection. But one of the parts of the analysis that has sort of a complete story that I'd like to share with you today is based on a subset of the teacher interviews. And so it's all about the teachers' perceptions of what they observed and noticed in the children as they're engaging with the microbit. And it's data from these 19 partner schools where we interviewed the teachers last year. So if you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the first thing I'll talk about is the technological self-efficacy, or the confidence as the teachers understood this as. And the teachers felt that the children were very confident in using the microbit and programming it. And not only that, but they saw their confidence increase. So this teacher said they've all grown in confidence in the short space of time that I've been using them, the microbits. Their excitement when they know the microbits are coming out is brilliant. Their digital skills have improved and their confidence has improved each week. Their resilience at the beginning when a code wasn't working and they couldn't understand why, they've definitely become more resilient over the weeks. So this is a nice quote to share with you, because not only does it address the concept of technological self-efficacy that we're looking at, but it also brings in things that we're not directly investigating. So digital skills, resilience, and so on. If you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the next thing we're looking at is creativity. And again, the teachers felt that the children had lots of opportunities to be creative when they were programming using the microbits. So I'll demonstrate this with this quote here. This one's quite nice. And with the step counter, one of the boys decided he wanted to, not that he needs practice with his times tables, but he changed it so that when he shook it, it counted in threes, which had been brilliant for, okay, what's next? 6? Oh yes, I'm right. And you just thought, okay, that's an application that I would never have thought of. It just shows how their minds work. So that was really nice, because there you can see that this teacher is talking about how she'd noticed one of their children in their class had been able to build on those skills, figure out that there's a particular sensor or feature of the microbit, so the accelerometer, that combined with the LED display. So he had made some sort of a project where when he shook it, it displayed his times tables, the numbers there. So I like that quote because it shows this cross-curricular link and bringing in other parts of the curriculum like maths as well. The next slide, please. Thank you. So in terms of socio-technological agency, this was a bit more mixed. I think across the board, the teachers felt that the children didn't necessarily have socio-technological agency. They weren't aware that the microbit is a piece of technology that has a wider use and implications in society. A lot of them felt that the children just saw it as something that happens within the classroom, within the four walls of the class, and doesn't come outside that space. But for those teachers who did notice that in their children, they then were able to link that to if those particular children had their own personal experiences with people who might use assistive technology, for example, either other classmates or family members. So this teacher here says, I know we've talked about one of the children in the class saying that she wants to use it for scribing for her sister. A lot of them have said if they could use it for Braille to help those who are visually impaired. So again, this is a nice quote because the children, those that are able to draw on their personal experiences, are making links between, okay, the microbit, it has an LED display. Could that be useful for people who are deaf? Or it plays sounds. Could that be useful for people who are visually impaired? So they're making the links there with the microbit and what they've learned about its inputs and outputs to could it be an actual piece of assistive technology? And then the next concept is digital capital. And this is one that we really want to follow over the years as we get more data, particularly from the parents, which we're starting to get this year, and as the children get older. But overall, the teachers felt that the microbit was a very important form of digital cultural capital. So just it physically existing as a device and the children having access to that in the classroom was really important, because for some children, they didn't have that access to computing or computers or technology like that at home. So this teacher here says, the children, especially in our school, don't have access to anything like this really at home. I think for our community, doing something like this, they wouldn't have had the opportunity. If it wasn't in school, they wouldn't be able to do it at home at all. So it develops their confidence in that way. So that's a really nice way of just showing you how that teacher thought that just it as a resource, it as a device, is very beneficial for some of the children. And again, there's the link there with confidence and perhaps their technological self-efficacy. So that's all I wanted to show in terms of the findings. I'll just summarise those. The baseline data from that subset of teachers that we interviewed suggests that the children have demonstrated their technological self-efficacy and creativity in their microbit lessons. However, their socio-technological agency, knowing that the microbit is a piece of technology that they can program and use, appeared to be a bit more limited. I didn't talk on this in any detail, but it's as it says there, the teachers reported little to no gender differences between boys and girls when engaging with the microbit, but that's certainly going to be one to explore as we get more data over the years. And then lastly, the microbit and how it's taught to the children have the potential to develop their digital capital. So I'll pass back over to Sue. Thank you very much. Oh, you're muted, Sue.
Yeah, I figured that out. Yeah, okay. So that was our, thank you, Jessie. That was our baseline data. So this is where the children are at the starting point, and we're looking for changes over time. So our we've we've already recruited the partner schools for the qualitative side, but we do need lots of engagement with the quantitative side, and we hope to increase those numbers for our next round. So it's not this summer. So this is a bit of an advance warning. It's not this summer, but it's next summer when we will be asking all UK teachers of I should change this, year 5 and 6, but I mean P6 and 7 if you're in Scotland or Northern Ireland, to complete a questionnaire about physical computing in their classroom and encourage their pupils to get involved with that as well. So we have a stay in touch page on our website if you make a note of that, and if you subscribe to our newsletter before that time, you will be notified about that happening. So that's all we had to say today. Hopefully that gives an overview of physical computing in general and what we've been working on, and we're very happy to receive any questions. I'll stop sharing. I think that's probably quite a good idea.
Thank you so much, Sue and Jessie, for that outline of your research as well, and it's superb to hear about the outcomes of the activities and how engaged the children have been as well from that first round of your research, but also really fascinating to hear the level of detail about the process, and particularly relative to the area of work we're exploring as well around agency and what you found around the relationships of agency to the tactile and material experience of technology, which to some extent mirrors what we've heard teachers saying actually about the technology around them in their classrooms and places of work as well. So yeah, please do add questions in the chat. I can see a few comments being added there, so I'll hand over to Christy now to moderate the questioning. So over to you, Christy.
Thank you, John. Chloe's just posted a question. Would you describe the schools as super users when it comes to using technology? And were there demographical differences between the communities the schools serve?
So I'll start answering, but I think Jessie might be able to come in because she's very familiar with all the schools. So we obviously the schools they're self-selecting, so they are expressing an interest, but we have a financial incentive that it means that we're not just taking schools that just have lots of time to sort of get involved with research. I'd say that we have quite a mix as in different areas of the country, and also because we've got schools in areas where the computing curriculum is different to England, obviously. So in Northern Ireland, there might not be as much computing in the curriculum, so the schools won't have had, do you know what I mean, the engagement with technology, with computing, just by nature of the fact that the computing curriculum is different. And again, it's different in Wales and Scotland in different ways. So I think that we do have variety, and certainly my experience of the teacher interviews is that a lot of the teachers feel quite nervous when they're setting out to on this project, and they might have been volunteered by their computing coordinator, but we so I think we have varying levels of sort of teacher confidence, and certainly we have a mix of computing coordinator type, sort of people who are more specialist in computing, and lots of teachers who are quite non-specialist teachers who are just doing this for this project. Jessie, I've said quite a lot actually. Jessie, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, thank you, Sue. Yeah, I'll just add about Chloe, you've asked them whether demographical differences between the communities they serve. Yeah, I think so. That last quote I showed you about how the children just don't have access to anything like that at home, I think that was a school where a high proportion of the children have English as an additional language. We had schools having high proportions of children eligible for free school meals, right the way through to the other end, fee-paying schools, faith schools. all across the UK, as Sue has already mentioned. I think that's all I wanted to add there. Thanks.
Thank you both. Catherine has just asked, are you looking at any data relating to children with additional learning needs and the use of devices?
That's a really good question, Catherine. So it's actually not one of our research questions, but it's something that is coming up, emerging through talking to the teachers, in that they are finding, again, this is probably much better for Jessie to speak about than me, that they are explicitly saying how that they are finding that physical computing might be engaging children who hadn't normally been able to access some aspects of the lesson, just because there are multiple entry points. So in answer to your question, the data that we have isn't coming from the demographics of the classroom, but it is coming from comments that are coming from the teachers. I don't know if you want to say anything else, Jessie. I just think it's something that is emerging for us rather than that we were initially investigating.
Yeah, I agree. We're not directly looking at it, but there appears to be data there that suggests that.
Thank you. Amy asks whether there might be a link between the pre-programmed devices and the finding that in some cases the student's technological agency was lower. Perhaps they didn't know they could control it.
Thank you, Amy. So I think the pre-programmed devices was only for the quantitative the larger scale study with anybody. We weren't going to the schools. It was done remotely by teachers. Now we haven't analysed that data fully yet, so we haven't got any data. We haven't really got any findings about the socio-technological agency around using those pre-programmed devices. The findings that Jessie reported were really about the teachers, where they had been, each teacher delivered a unit of work of 5 or 6 lessons. It's on the microbit site called the first lessons with the microbit. So they had delivered those. So they'd made a beating heart, they'd made the step counter, they'd done the rock paper scissors. So that was where that finding came from. So sorry if that was a bit confusing.
Thank you both. I wonder, you said that the teachers don't really see gender differences emerging right now, but I wonder, as you're analyzing the qualitative data, if you are beginning to pick up some differences in how the students have designed their microbits.
I think that's an interesting question, and yeah, that may emerge as we analyse the data further. Occasionally some of the teachers came up with some sort of slight things that they thought there was a gender difference for these 8-9-year-olds. I think what we're expecting, our hypothesis is that this will change over time. So imagine we're following young people up to the age of sort of 13. So, and we think that we might see more difference that's gender related further down the line.
Thank you. We have just a couple of minutes left. If anyone has an additional question, while you type, I will hand over to John and we'll just see if anyone posted an additional question.
Thanks, Christy, and once again, thanks to Sue and Jessie for sharing that detail in response to the questions as well. And thank you to other guests. I could see some generous invitations and exchanges within the chat as well. So it's great that the webinar has stimulated these connections as well. Just in terms of connecting both with the research of Sue and Jessie and the project that's hosting this webinar, I'll just share the link for the Enhancing Teacher Agency project in the chat there. And if I just share my screen very briefly, and just in response to one of the questions in the chat, if you want to see the previous webinar recordings, if you visit our website and the resources page, you'll then find a link to the webinar series. Here you have in orange the details of today's webinar, of course, and then below access to earlier webinars that will take you through to videos of the earlier webinars for our work. And then around that, we'd certainly invite you to engage with our network. So through the rest of the year, and I hope indeed beyond, we'll be sharing the findings of our research regionally and nationally, and you can join our network to receive updates around that. And you'll also see here a link to our national survey. Again, we'd really welcome the response of colleagues for the survey. That it all contributes to our understanding of how colleagues are experiencing technology in all aspects of their work. Your insights are of huge value to as developing that understanding of agency for teachers, which is a nice complement, I think, to what we've heard today from Sue and Jessie about the agency of children as well with technology. So thanks once again, Sue and Jessie. I'd just like to thank Christy actually as well for preparing the session today, but also our colleague Helen Stewart, who's not with us this afternoon, but also did a lot of the preparation for this afternoon's event. So thank you, everyone, and we'll draw the session to a close. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Okay.